Hey guys, welcome back to another econ lesson. Ratty was hoping to see a little bit more of my face, so I figured that I'd give you guys a photo of Rain and I just hanging out during quarantine, making the best of the situation. So the next topic we're going to be looking at is talking about how the market functions. This is going to be pretty straightforward. What we're looking at is how businesses approach the market, trying to differentiate their products and make their product more appealing to consumers, and then also recognize the role of consumers in the market, what role they play in dictating what business does in terms of setting price and moving products and creating new products. All right, guys, so the next thing I want you to do is pick a product that you think would make money in the market. Now, these are those times that I'm really missing class because I'm already picturing it right now. Brett, Ratty, and Bushy, I already know what product you guys are going to say. And for the love of God, please pick something different besides the daddy saddle. Um, yeah, I could just imagine everybody right now rolling their eyes and everybody laughing at my expression of trying to get you to pick something different, but knowing that is the product that, for whatever reason, we always have to go back to. So once a sole proprietor or a partnership or a corporation, once they think they have a product that they could sell and there would be demand for this product in the market, they need to go through and ask themselves a series of questions to see, is this product something that people are willing to buy? As you guys can see on the PowerPoint slide itself, you want to ask yourself, like, how many buyers and suppliers are there? Is the market saturated, or is this a market that is kind of fresh? How big and powerful are these established corporations or sellers already? Do they really have a foothold in the market, or is there room for me to be able to get into? Is one deciding all of the prices? How much competition is there? So you really want to ask yourselves, if you're really thinking about pursuing that business or you have a product that you think could sell, those are the first questions that you really want to ask yourself before diving into the market is, what does the market look like for this product? And even simpler, is there a market for this product? So guys, when we look at the market, it really breaks itself down into a couple of different styles of competition. So the first style of competition that we're going to look at is what's known as perfect competition. Now, as you can see on the slide, the key part to recognize from this that's bolded there is that you're talking about selling identical products. So the good thing about selling identical products is that hopefully within this perfect competition, you're going to have a large number of sellers and buyers, which means there's a lot of opportunity. But again, you're looking at identical products. This is the problem. Perfect competition doesn't really exist because no company is going to produce an identical product. Every company wants to make their product somewhat different than their competitors because that's going to give them some type of edge. But just for the sake of an economic term, this is what perfect competition is. But the reality, perfect competition doesn't exist because producers are always trying to make their product somehow better than their competitors to get consumers to go buy their product. So in imperfect competition, this is given to a market that is missing one of the five elements needed for perfect competition. So again, it's the exact same list, the large number of buyers and sellers, the buyers and sellers deal in identical products, each buyer and seller act independently, etc. The big difference that I tend to see in the market is definitely number two. It's buyers and sellers deal in identical products. That's not true, and that doesn't exist in the market. As previously stated, you're always trying to look for something, some way to set your product apart. Besides that, buyers and sellers, there's tons of buyers and sellers in the market, so that works. Each buyer and seller act independently. There's supposed to be no collusion, so that works. Buyers and sellers are reasonably informed about products. You guys have the opportunity to do research on every single product that you buy. I doubt most of you do, but you do have the opportunity to go online and read consumer reviews and read customer reports and all sorts of different things. You can get as much information as you can get your hands onto. And then buyers and sellers are free to enter, conduct, and get out of business. No one's going to hold a gun to your head saying that you have to buy a product, and the government is not forcing a company to keep making a product. Okay, so one of the first business types that we find in an imperfect market is a monopoly. Now, guys, you got to remember if you were paying attention last year with Mr. Murray, they would have talked to you about the fact that during the early 1900s, trusts and monopolies, those were something that were targeted by President Teddy Roosevelt, and he passed a ton of legislation preventing monopolies. So technically, right now, in the United States, a monopoly is an illegal form of business. So this is something that we don't see very often, and here's the reasons why. Number one, there's no competition. So monopolies can basically do whatever they want and hold consumers at their whims, which is an awful thing. There's no substitutes in the market. So if the monopoly is making an inferior product, you have no choice but to keep going to that monopoly. So that gives the monopoly all of the power, and it takes all of the authority away from the consumer in the market, and you simply just have to buy that product because you have no other choice. So as I mentioned, pure monopolies are basically impossible to find. The monopoly can dictate the price because the monopoly could say, fine, if you don't want to pay this price for this product, then go somewhere else. But you got to remember, you can't go anywhere else because there's no substitute. So that's why monopolies are illegal. So when you think about it, it's just one seller, and they're the ones that run the entire market, which is completely unfair. But of course, things can never be easy. So there are a couple of types of monopolies that are legal that I need you guys to know. So one of the first is called a natural monopoly. So as the definition, as you can see, costs of production are the lowest when it's only one firm producing. So in Western New York, we have Erie County Water Authority. So this is the only option we have to get fresh water in Buffalo. There's no alternative to this. But this makes sense because if there were competing companies for this, it would actually cost us way more money, and that would be a huge problem. So it's just this in this scenario, it makes sense for it to have a monopoly, but Erie County Water Authority is checked by the government to make sure that their pricing is fair and controlled, and so that they're not taking advantage of consumers. Okay, another example is a government monopoly. Best example for that is a police force. You don't want to have privatized police. That just doesn't make sense. So what happened, or competing police forces, as though they're competing against each other to arrest, or that they're trying to get to a burglary before the other one. So again, a government monopoly is simply that it's going to only be one option. It's going to be run by the government, controlled by the government, but with the hopes of making things more efficient and smoother. Okay, another type of monopoly, a technological monopoly, so it controls a manufacturing method. This you talk about with like copyrights and trademarks. Um, yes, if you come up with an idea, it is yours. You don't technically have to release it to the public. You can use it for yourself. And if somebody does use that technology that you came up with, they have to pay you for it. So we constantly see Apple on the forefront of all of these new technologies with their phones. So you could say that they have a technological monopoly because they have all of these patents and all of these new innovations in their phones, and that's really what separates Apple from its competitors. And then lastly, a geographic monopoly. That's simply if you just think about, I use internet for this example. Really, the only option that we have in Western New York is Spectrum. Okay, and before that, it was called Time Warner. Now, recently, people have an option of getting FiOS, but that's slow. Not everybody has that option. I don't think we have it on the island yet, or there may be a few people that do, but I don't think it's completely popularized yet and available. So, really, the only option that we have is Spectrum. That's it. And that's because Spectrum already has the infrastructure set up on the island to run the internet, and FiOS hasn't set that up yet. Once FiOS catches up to it, then all of a sudden Grand Island is going to have competition, and that you could have that choice. But for right now, the only option that you have is Spectrum, and that's just because Spectrum has that geographical control because they're the ones to first set it all up. So the reality that we really live in for economics is this notion of a monopolistic competition. So the market structure is the same for perfect competition, the number of buyers and sellers, free to come and go. The big thing is product differentiation. So guys, if you look at the example that I picked, if you want to look at for red t-shirts, okay, well, if you just want for a basic generic red t-shirt, that would give you, you would have tons of options. But the minute that you put a logo or you put some type of design on a t-shirt and you trademark that design, all of a sudden now that becomes, you're the only one that can make it. Essentially, that becomes your monopoly. So as you guys can see, this Abercrombie and Fitch t-shirt, now accepting hot girlfriends, despite the fact that it is a, I've been fought on this one, whether it's red or that it's burnt red or burnt orange or whatever, that is the only t-shirt with that logo. So if somebody else from Hollister or American Eagle or any other store made that exact t-shirt, they would be sued by Abercrombie. So essentially, Abercrombie has created a monopoly on now accepting hot girlfriends 1892 burnt orange t-shirts. Now I know you're going to ask too, Donnelly, were you the one that was wearing the now accepting hot girlfriends t-shirt from Abercrombie and Fitch? And the answer is no. I did have the frosted tips, I did have the puka shell necklaces, but I was not wearing that t-shirt. But I did have a friend who did own that shirt, and I'll let you take a guess on who that person is. So for the final example that I want to show you guys with product differentiation, again, like with the Sabres t-shirts, if I was to say I want to go buy a Sabres t-shirt, okay, but there's a difference between buying the navy blue and buying the gray. So because of that product differentiation, that then creates that monopolistic competition that whoever has the navy Sabres shirt in that design, that is their design and that's their shirt. So then you have to come up with an alternative shirt to try to sell. So that's why you notice t-shirts with the most subtle little changes, or that they'll have a logo in a different spot, anything that they can to try to make their product just a little bit different or a little bit more unique. So another way that companies try to create this desire for their product is we will call these non-price competitors and non-price competition. If you look at the two phones, so on the left you had the Motorola Razr, which was the coolest phone ever. When I was in college, so we're talking like 2002, 2003, 2004, those were the coolest phones ever. But they were the same price as their competitors. But what made the Razr super cool was the fact that it was so small and so sleek. Everybody wanted that. It still had the exact same functions. You could barely text. You could only keep simple photos. You couldn't take video. You couldn't do anything special with it. It was just the fact that it looked different. It's the exact same thing if you look at the Apples. I think those are the 5Cs. So they're the exact same phones. The only difference is the colors between them. But some people really wanted a pink phone, or some people really wanted a green phone, and that is what gave it a little bit of differentiation within the market. And my favorite example of these imperfect competitions is simply just the differentiation of a product. I mean, when you're looking at pop is the best one. You can go to Wegmans or go to Tops, and you're going to see an entire market or aisle of just tons of pop. Dr. Pepper, Diet Dr. Pepper, Dr. Tops, Dr. Pibb, Dr. W. Like there's just so much product differentiation. You can get your Aunt Rosie's Loganberry. You could get your Wild Cherry Pepsi. You could get your Wild Cherry Coke. You could get your Orange. It's all different by the subtlest of margins, but it has to be different in order for them to sell it and to be able to make money. So the final structure that we're going to look at is something called an oligopoly. So an oligopoly is really when you look at a few companies that make up the vast majority of the market. They're the ones that are going to have complete control. They're the ones who are going to be able to dictate price and really just kind of run the show. We could see examples. Think of like cell phones, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile. Those are the major producers. AT&T, and that's it. You're not going to be able to get other companies or other phones in there. Cricket, those don't last. When you think of, like, think Western New York for coffee, your options are really, it's Tim Hortons, Starbucks, or Dunkin' Donuts. And even that, like, no one's going to Dunkin' Donuts. So it's just a few of these major companies that dictate the market. So a good thing about an oligopoly is that smaller companies do have the opportunity to get into the market, but as the slide says, they're just going to be looked at as knockoffs. You look at like Wegmans Pop or Tops Pop. Yeah, people drink them, but most people are still going to, if you're going to have a can of pop, you're going to drink either Pepsi or Coke, just simply because they're the ones that are the name brands. Using that idea of pop, the only reason people buy Tops brand is because they're going to Tops, or the only reason that they're buying Wegmans is because they're already in Wegmans, and usually the price is cheaper, so that's why they use that as a substitute. But the reality is that those huge monster brands, they really dictate who can come into the market. And that's really, we get into the bad of this. Let's look at cell phones. I mean, realistically, most of you guys, we've talked about this. Either you have an Apple or you have a Samsung, and that's it. And it's because Apple has this ability to drive out competitors simply because either one, it's name recognition. Everybody wants Apple because they think Apple's the best, or that Apple has the best technology, or that Apple can dictate the price. And whatever Apple does, Samsung's going to go along with it. If Apple wants to sell a phone for $1,000, Samsung's going to probably sell their phone for around $1,000. So then those smaller companies, they're going to jump up and they're going to sell their phone for $1,000, but you're going to look at it and say, what the heck is product X? I've never heard of it, and I'm certainly not going to pay $1,000 for it. Hence, product X isn't going to be able to survive in the market. And lastly, the ugly, as I just kind of mentioned, the price is dictated by the largest companies. Whatever they want is what they're going to do. And if you don't follow suit with those larger companies, you're probably going to get driven out. Either you're not going to make enough money to survive, or simply that if you try to bump the price, no one's going to buy your product. So unfortunately, when you're trying to enter the market and you're in this world of oligopolies, you're really going to struggle as a startup unless you have something really unique about your product that's going to somehow knock out one of the giants that have already been established into that market. All right, guys, so that wraps up Chapter 7. You're going to find your assignments on Google Classroom, so please make sure that you get going on those as soon as you can. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Hope to see you guys as soon as we possibly can. Try to keep your spirits up, and all the best.